Imagine walking home late at night, broke, exhausted, and desperate for a miracle. Then suddenly, in the middle of an empty street, you see a glowing market that wasn't there before. People whispering, coins exchanging hands, strange items on display. But the most terrifying part? No one there is selling food, or clothes, or jewelry. They're selling something far more valuable. They're selling years of their life. And tonight, one woman is about to become a millionaire without realizing the terrifying price she'll pay. Jane had always believed that hard work would eventually pay off. But lately, life had other plans. At 27 years old, she was drowning in problems. Her rent was 3 months overdue. Her job at a small restaurant barely paid enough for food. And every night she returned to a tiny apartment that felt colder and emptier each day. Bills piled up like a mountain she could never climb. One evening, after her boss cut her hours again, Jane walked home under the dim streetlights of the quiet city. Her feet dragged against the pavement. Her mind raced with worry. "What am I going to do?" she whispered to herself. That night felt unusually strange. The air was colder. The streets were silent. And as she turned into an alley that she had walked through hundreds of times before, she stopped. Because something impossible stood before her. A market. Bright lanterns, dozens of stalls, crowds of people whispering and negotiating. Jane frowned in confusion. This wasn't here yesterday. Curiosity pulled her closer. The market felt different from any she had ever seen. Strange symbols hung from the stalls. Old clocks ticked loudly on wooden tables. Glass jars glowed faintly under the lantern lights. But the items being sold made no sense. At one stall, a man held a small bottle labelled "Childhood Memory, $20,000. At another stall, a woman traded something written on a piece of paper. The merchant nodded and handed her a thick envelope of cash. Jane leaned closer and overheard their conversation. "How many years?" the merchant asked. "Just 2, the woman replied nervously. The merchant smiled. "That will be $2 million. Jane froze. Years? What did that mean? Before she could think further, a deep voice spoke behind her. "You look lost." Jane turned around slowly. Standing behind her was a tall old man wearing a long, dark coat. His eyes were calm, but strangely unsettling. "First time at the midnight market?" he asked. "Midnight market?" Jane repeated. He chuckled softly. "Yes, the place where people trade what they have for what they want." Jane looked around again. What exactly are they selling? The old man smiled. "Time." Jane laughed nervously. "That's impossible." But the old man simply gestured toward a nearby stall. "Watch." At the table sat a nervous young man. "I'll sell 5 years," he said quietly. The merchant wrote something on a paper and handed him a contract. Moments later, the man walked away with a suitcase full of money. Jane's heart began racing. This can't be real." The old man leaned closer. "Oh, it's very real." He pointed to a glowing clock on the table. "Every human has a certain amount of time in this world. At the midnight market, you can trade it." Jane felt a chill run down her spine. "And how much is 1 year worth?" she asked carefully. The old man smiled slowly. $5 million. Jane's breath caught. $5 million for 1 year. Her mind instantly filled with possibilities. No more rent problems, no more struggling, a better life. "Is there a catch?" she asked. "Only one," the old man replied. You lose that year from your life. Jane hesitated. 1 year didn't seem like much. People wasted years all the time. 1 year for $5 million? It felt like the easiest decision in the world. All right, she said finally. I'll sell 1 year. The old man's smile widened. Excellent choice. Jane signed the strange contract. The moment her signature touched the paper, the lanterns around the stall flickered. A cold wind passed through the market, and suddenly, Jane felt something strange, like a small piece of her energy had vanished. The old man handed her a small black card. Your payment has been transferred. Jane checked her phone. Her eyes widened. Her bank account now showed $5 million. Her hands began shaking. It was real. She was rich. Jane left the market laughing in disbelief. For the first time in years, life felt perfect. Over the next few weeks, Jane's life transformed completely. She bought a luxury apartment, expensive clothes, a brand new car. Every dream she had ever imagined became reality. But slowly, strange things started happening. She felt tired more often. Her reflection in the mirror looked slightly different. And one morning, while brushing her hair, she noticed something shocking. A single grey hair. Jane stared at it in confusion. I'm only 27. She tried to ignore it, but the changes continued. Her energy faded. Her face looked slightly older. And deep down, she began to feel afraid. Unable to ignore it anymore, Jane returned to the alley where she had first seen the market. At exactly midnight, the lanterns appeared again. The midnight market had returned. She rushed to find the old man. You didn't tell me this would happen, she demanded. The old man looked calm. I told you exactly what would happen. You sold 1 year of your life. Jane's heart pounded. But I feel like I'm aging faster. That's because you are now aware of the time you lost, he explained. Jane clenched her fists. Can I take it back? The old man shook his head slowly. No one ever does. He leaned closer. But you could sell more. Jane stared at him. What? Most people who come here return again and again, he said softly. You could sell 10 more years and become one of the richest people alive. Jane looked around the market. Some people looked wealthy, but others looked strangely old, even though they weren't supposed to be. And suddenly, Jane realized the terrifying truth. These people had sold too much of their life. The old man placed another contract on the table. 10 years for $50 million. Jane stared at the paper. Her heart raced. $50 million. Enough to live in luxury forever. But at what cost? Her life. She looked at the market again, at the people slowly trading their future away. Then she took a deep breath and pushed the contract back. No. The old man raised an eyebrow. You're sure? Jane nodded. Money isn't worth my life. For the first time, the old man looked surprised. Then he slowly smiled. Few people ever say that. The lanterns flickered again, and the market began to fade. Jane walked away into the quiet night. She was no longer a millionaire, but she still had something far more valuable. Time. And sometimes, that is the greatest wealth of all. as the first light of dawn appeared in the sky. For the first time in weeks, she felt relieved. She had chosen her life over money. The midnight market was gone. Or so she thought. As she walked past a dark shop window, something strange caught her attention. She stopped. Slowly, she looked at her reflection. At first, everything seemed normal, but then her heart dropped. Her reflection wasn't moving exactly like she was, and behind her reflection, she saw something terrifying. The old merchant, standing in the darkness, smiling. Jane spun around, but the street behind her was empty. Her heart pounded. "Just my imagination," she whispered nervously. Then her phone suddenly vibrated in her hand. She looked down at the screen. A new bank notification had appeared. Her eyes widened in horror. It read, $50 million successfully deposited. Jane's breathing stopped. She never signed that contract. Slowly, another notification appeared. Transaction complete. 10 years of lifespan transferred. Her hands began shaking. Then a final message appeared on the screen. "Thank you for shopping at the midnight market." Jane slowly looked up, and across the street, a glowing lantern suddenly lit up. Then another, and another. The market was back. But this time, it wasn't in the alley. It was following her. And somewhere in the shadows, the old merchant whispered, "Everyone sells eventually." If someone offered you $50 million for 10 years of your life, would you take the deal?